हेलो फ्रेंड्स, नमस्ते, आदाब, सत श्री अकाल। मैं प्रोफेसर दत्तात्रेय घुड़की आप सभी का फिर से एक बार स्वागत करता हूँ आपके चहेते शो में जिसका नाम है रीड विथ मी। चलिए कुछ अच्छा सुनते हैं। In a few latest few episodes, we have started reading a very special book entitled as Think and Grow Rich, which is written by Napoleon Hill. And so far, we have completed the first three chapter reading, or we can say we have completed the part one. And what we have decided? We have decided to read this book into total five parts, and each part will consist of subsequent three chapters. तो आज के एपिसोड में हम क्या देखेंगे? चैप्टर नंबर 4, 5 एंड 6. Like that, many number of books already we have completed reading. Those are Ikigai, The Japanese Secret to Long and Happy Life, then How to Take Back Control of Your Life, Inner Engineering, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, then Power of Positive Thinking, and so on. Like that, many books we have read already. If you have missed any of the book reading, you can find the link of that book reading into description box, and you can go over there and you can have the learnings. Okay, तो चलिए आज के एपिसोड को शुरुआत करते हैं. लेट अस स्टार्ट विद पार्ट नंबर 2 ऑफ दिस वेरी स्पेशल बुक थिंक एंड ग्रो रिच, which is written by Napoleon Hill. But before start, let me ask for you for a favor. What you have to do, you have to share these audiobooks with minimum 10 peoples if possible. क्योंकि इस 10 लोगों के साथ शेयर करके हम क्या कर सकते हैं? We try to have a positive change, or you can help them to understand, and you can help them to learn many new things from these Think and Grow Rich book, and you can help them to take their life to the newer heights or greater heights. Thank you so much for that, and I am damn sure that you are going to help me by sharing this video with as many people as you can. At least you are going to share this video with 10 of your, that may be siblings, friends, loved ones, whatever it may be. तो चलिए let us go ahead with part number 2 of this very special book entitled as Think and Grow Rich, which is written by Napoleon Hill. Let us start with chapter number 4, Ato Suggestion. The medium for influencing the subconscious mind. The third step towards riches. First two steps we have completed. Those are nothing but, first one was burning desire, and second one is nothing but what? Faith. And now third one, that is Ato Suggestion. Ato Suggestion is a term which applies to all suggestions and all administered stimuli which reach one's mind through 5 senses. Stated in another way, Ato Suggestion is a self-suggestion. It is the agency of communication between that part of mind where conscious thoughts takes place and that which serves as a seat of action for the subconscious mind. Through the dominating thoughts which one permits to remain in the conscious mind, whether these thoughts be negative or positive is immaterial. The principle of autosuggestion voluntarily reaches the subconscious mind and influences it with these thoughts. No thoughts, whether it be negative or positive, can enter the subconscious mind without the aid of the principle of autosuggestion. With the exception of thoughts picked up from the ether. Stated differently, all sense impressions which are perceived through 5 senses are stopped by the conscious thinking mind and may be either passed on to the subconscious mind or rejected at will. The conscious faculty serves therefore as an outer guard to the approach of subconscious. Nature has to build man that he has absolute control over the material which reaches his subconscious mind through his 5 senses. Although this is not meant to be constructed as a statement that man always exercises this control. In the great majority of instances, he does not exercise it, which explains why so many people go through life in poverty. Recall what has been said about the subconscious mind resembling a fertile garden spot in which weeds will grow in abundance if the seeds of more desirable crops are not sown therein. Ato Suggestion is the agency of control through which an individual may voluntarily feed his subconscious mind on thoughts of a creative nature, or by neglect permit thoughts of destructive nature to find their way into this rich garden of the mind. You were instructed in the last of the six steps described in the chapter on desire to read aloud twice daily the written statement of your desire for money, and to see and feel yourself already in possession of the money. By following these instructions, you communicate the object of your desire directly to your subconscious mind in a spirit of absolute faith. Through repetition of this procedure, you voluntarily create thought habits which are favorable to your efforts to transmute desire into its monetary equivalent. Go back to the six steps described in chapter 2 and read them again very carefully before you proceed further. Then, when you come to it, read very carefully the four instructions for the organization of your mastermind group described in the chapter on organized planning. By comparing these two sets of instructions which has been stated on Ato Suggestion, you of course will see that the instructions involve the application of the principle of Ato Suggestion. Remember, therefore, when reading aloud the statement of your desire through which you are endeavoring to develop a money consciousness, that the mere reading of the words is of no consequence unless you mix emotion or feelings with your words. If you repeat a million times the famous Emlico formula day by day in every way, I'm getting better and better, without mixing emotion and faith with your words, you will experience no desirable results. Your subconscious mind recognizes and acts upon only thoughts which have been well mixed with emotion or feeling. This is the fact of such importance as to warrant repetition in practically every chapter, because the lack of understanding of this is the main reason the majority of people who try to apply the principle of Ato Suggestion get no desirable results. Plain unemotional words do not influence the subconscious mind. You will get no appreciable results until you learn to reach your subconscious mind with thoughts or spoken words which have been well emotionalized with belief. Do not become discouraged if you cannot control and direct emotions the first time you try to do so. Remember, there is no such possibility as something for nothing. Ability to reach and influence your subconscious mind has its price, and you must pay that price. You cannot cheat even if you desire to do so. The price of ability to influence your subconscious mind is everlasting persistence in applying the principles described here. You cannot develop the desired ability for a lower price. You and you alone must decide whether or not the reward for which you are striving, the money consciousness, is worth the price you must pay for it in effort. Wisdom and cleverness alone will not attract and retain money except in a few very rare instances where the law of averages favors the attraction of money through these sources. The method of attracting money described here does not depend upon the law of averages. Moreover, the method plays no favorites. It will work for one person as effectively as it will for another. Where failure is experienced, it is the individual, not the method, which has failed. If you try and fail, make another effort and still another until you succeed. Your ability to use the principle of Ato Suggestion will depend very largely upon your capacity to concentrate upon a given desire until that desire becomes a burning obsession. When you begin to carry out the instructions in connection with the 6 steps described in the second chapter, it will be necessary for you to make use of this principle of a concentration. Let us here offer suggestions for effective use of concentration. When you begin to carry out the first of the 6 steps, which instructs you to fix in your own mind the exact amount of money you desire. Hold your thoughts on that amount of money by concentration or fixation of attention with your eyes closed until you can actually see the physical appearance of the money. Do this at least once each day. As you go through these exercises, follow the instructions given in chapter on faith and see yourself actually in possession of the money. Here is the most significant fact: the subconscious mind takes any orders given it in a spirit of absolute faith and acts upon those orders. Although the orders often have to be presented over and over again through repetition before they are interpreted by the subconscious mind. Following the preceding statement, consider the possibility of playing a perfectly legitimate trick on your subconscious mind by making it believe, because you believe it, that you must have the amount of money you are visualizing, that this money is already awaiting your claim, that the subconscious mind must hand over to you practical plans for acquiring the money which is yours. Hand over thoughts suggested in the preceding paragraph to your imagination and see what your imagination can or will do to create practical plans for the accumulation of money through transmutation of your desire. Do not wait for a definite plan through which you intend to exchange services or merchandise in return for the money you are visualizing, but begin at once to see yourself in possession of the money, demanding and expecting meanwhile that your subconscious mind will hand over the plan or plans you need. Be on the alert for these plans, and when they appear, put them into action immediately. When the plans appear, they will probably flash into your mind through the sixth sense in the form of an inspiration. This inspiration may be considered a direct telegram or message from the infinite intelligence. Treat it with respect and act upon it as soon as you receive it. Failure to do this will be fatal to your success. In the fourth of the sixth step, you were instructed to create a definite plan for carrying out your desire and begin at once to put this plan into action. You should follow these instructions in the manner described in the preceding paragraph. Do not trust your reason when creating your plan for accumulating money through the transmutation of desire. Your reason is faulty. Moreover, your reasoning faculty may be lazy, and if you depend entirely upon it to serve you, it may disappoint you. When visualizing the money you intend to accumulate with closed eyes, see yourself rendering the service or delivering the merchandise you intend to give in a return for this money. This is important. Summary of instructions. The fact that you are reading this book is an indication that you earnestly seek knowledge. It is also an indication that you are a student of this subject. If you are only a student, there is a chance that you may learn much that you did not know, but you will learn only by assuming an attitude of humility. If you choose to follow some of the instructions but neglect or refuse to follow others, you will fail. To get satisfactory results, you must follow all instructions in the spirit of faith. The instructions given in connection with the 6 steps in the second chapter will now be summarized and blended with the principles covered by this chapter as follows. First, go into some quiet spot, preferably in bed at night, where you will not be disturbed or interrupted. Close your eyes and repeat aloud, so you may hear your own words, the written statement of the amount of money you intend to accumulate, the time limit for its accumulation, and a description of the service or a merchandise you intend to give in return for the money. As you carry out these instructions, see yourself already in possession of the money. For example, suppose that you intend to accumulate $50,000 by the 1st of January 5 years hence, that you intend to give personal service in return for money in the capacity of salesman. Your written statement of the purpose should be similar to the following. By the first day of January 2019, I will have in my possession $50,000, which will come to me in various amounts from time to time during the interim. In return for this money, I will give the most efficient service of which I am capable, rendering the fullest possible quantity and the best possible quality of service in the capacity of salesman of describe the service or merchandise you intend to sell. I believe that I will have this money in my possession. My faith is so strong that I can now see this money before my eyes. I can touch it with my hands. It is now awaiting transfer to me at the time and in the proportion that I deliver the service I intend to render in return for it. I'm awaiting a plan by which to accumulate this money, and I will follow that plan when it is received. Second, repeat this program night and morning until you can see in your imagination the memory you intend to accumulate. Third, place a written copy of your statement where you can see it night and morning and read it just before retiring and upon arising until it has been memorized. Remember, as you carry out these instructions, that you are applying the principle of Ato Suggestion for the purpose of giving orders to your subconscious mind. Remember also that your subconscious mind will act only upon instructions which are emotionalized and handed over to it with feeling. Faith is the strongest and most productive of emotions. Follow the instructions given in a chapter on faith. The instructions may at first seem abstract. Do not let this disturb you. Follow the instructions no matter how abstract or impractical they may at first appear to be. The time will soon come, if you do so as you have been instructed, in spirit as well as in act, when a whole new universe of power will unfold to you. Skepticism in connection with all new ideas is a characteristic of all human beings. But if you follow the instructions outlined, your skepticism will soon be replaced by belief, and this in turn will soon become crystallized into absolute faith. Then you will have arrived at the point where you may truly say, I am the master of my faith and I am the captain of my soul. Many philosophers have made the statement that man is the master of his own earthly destiny, but most of them have failed to say why he is the master. The reason that man may be the master of his own earthly status and especially his financial status is thoroughly explained in this chapter. Man may become the master of himself or of his environment because he has the power to influence his own subconscious mind and through it gain the cooperation of infinite intelligence. You are now reading the chapter which represents the keystone to the arch of this philosophy. The instructions contained in this chapter must be understood and applied with persistence if you succeed in transmuting desire into money. The actual performance of transmuting desire into money involves the use of Ato Suggestion as an agency by which one may reach and influence the subconscious mind. The other principles are simply tools with which to apply Ato Suggestion. Keep this thought in mind and you will at all times be conscious of the important part the principle of Ato Suggestion is to play in your effort to accumulate money through the methods described in this book. Carry out these instructions as though you were a small child. Inject into your efforts something of the faith of a child. The author has been most careful to see that no impractical instructions were included because of his sincere desire to be helpful. After you have read the entire book, come back to this chapter and follow in spirit and in action this instruction. Read the entire chapter aloud once every night until you become thoroughly convinced that the principle of Ato Suggestion is sound, that it will accomplish for you all that has been claimed for it. As you read, underscore with a pencil every sentence which impresses you favorably. Follow the Follow the foregoing instructions to the letter, and it will open the way for a complete understanding and mastery of the principles of success. Let us get ahead with chapter number 5, Specialized Knowledge. Personal experiences or observations, the fourth step towards riches. There are two kinds of knowledge, one is general and other is specialized. General knowledge, no matter how great in quantity or variety it may be, is of but little use in the accumulation of money. The faculties of the great universities possess in the aggregate practically every form of general knowledge known to civilization. Most of the professors have but little or no money. They specialize on teaching knowledge, but they do not specialize on the organization or the use of knowledge. Knowledge will not attract money unless it is organized and intelligently directed through practical plans of action to the definite end of accumulation of money. Lack of understanding of this fact has been the source of confusion to millions of people who falsely believe that knowledge is power. Knowledge is nothing of the sort. Knowledge is the only potential power. It becomes power only when and if it is organized into definite plans of action and directed to a definite end. This missing link in all systems of education known to civilization today may be found in the failure of educational institutions to teach their students how to organize and use knowledge after they acquired it. Many people make the mistake of assuming that because Henry Ford had but little schooling, he has not a man of education. Those who make this mistake do not know Henry Ford, nor do they understand the real meaning of the word educate. The word is derived from the Latin word educo, meaning to educe, to draw out, to develop from within. An educated man is not necessarily one who has an abundance of general or specialized knowledge. An educated man is one who has so developed the faculties of his mind that he may acquire anything he wants or its equivalent without violating the rights of others. Henry Ford comes well within the meaning of this definition. During the World War, a Chicago newspaper published certain editorials in which, among other statements, Henry Ford was called an ignorant pacifist. Mr. Ford objected to the statements and brought suit against the paper for labeling him. When the suit was tried in the court, the attorney for the paper pleaded justification and placed Mr. Ford himself on the witness stand for the purpose of providing the jury that he was ignorant. The attorneys asked Mr. Ford a great variety of questions, all of them intent to prove by his own evidence that while he might possess considerable specialized knowledge pertaining to the manufacture of automobiles, he was in the main ignorant. Mr. Ford was plied with such questions as following: who was the Benedict Arnold, and how many soldiers did the British send over to America to put down the rebellion of 1776? In the answer to the last question, Mr. Ford replied, I do not know the exact number of soldiers the British sent over, but I have heard that it was a considerably larger number than ever went back. Finally, Mr. Ford became tired of this line of questioning, and in a reply to a particular offensive question, he leaned over, pointed his finger at the lawyer who had asked the question and said, if I should really want to answer the foolish questions you have just asked or any of the other questions you have been asking me, let me remind you that I have a row of electric push buttons on my desk, and by pushing the right button I can summon to my aid men who can answer any question I desire to ask concerning the business to which I am devoting most of my efforts. Now, will you kindly tell me why I should clutter up my mind with general knowledge for the purpose of being able to answer questions when I have men around me who can supply any knowledge I require? There certainly was a good logic to that reply. The answer floored the lawyer. Every person in the courtroom realized it was the answer, not of an ignorant man, but a man of education. Any man is educated who knows where to get knowledge when he needs it and how to organize that knowledge into definite plans of action. Through the assistance of his mastermind group, Henry Ford has at his command all the specialized knowledge he needed to enable him to become one of the wealthiest men in America. It was not essential that he have his knowledge in his own mind. Surely no person who has sufficient inclination and intelligence to read a book of this nature can possibly miss the significance of this illustration. Before you can be sure of your ability to transmute desire into the monetary equivalent, you will require specialized knowledge of the service, merchandise, or profession which you intend to offer in return for fortune. Perhaps you may need much more specialized knowledge than you have the ability or inclination to acquire, and if this should be true, you may bridge your weakness through the aid of your mastermind group. Andrew Carnegie stated that he personally knew nothing about the technical end of the steel business. Moreover, he did not particularly care to know anything about it. The specialized knowledge which he required for the manufacture and marketing of steel he found available through the individual units of his mastermind group. The accumulation of great fortunes calls the power, and power is acquired through highly organized and intelligently directed specialized knowledge, but that knowledge does not necessarily have to be in the possession of the man who accumulates the fortune. The preceding paragraph should give hope and encouragement to the man with ambition to accumulate a fortune who has not possessed himself of the necessary education to supply such specialized knowledge as he may require. Men something go through life suffering from inferiority complex because they are not men of education. The man who can organize and direct a mastermind group of men who possess knowledge useful in the accumulation of money is just as much a man of education as any man in the group. Remember this: if you suffer from a feeling of inferiority because your schooling has been limited. Thomas A. Edison had only 3 months of schooling during his entire life. He did not lack education, neither did he die poor. Henry Ford had less than 6th grade schooling, but he has managed to do pretty well by himself financially. Specialized knowledge is among the most plentiful and the cheapest forms of service which may be had. If you doubt this, consult the payroll of any university. It pays to know how to purchase the knowledge. First of all, decide the sort of specialized knowledge you require and the purpose for which it is needed. To a large extent, your major purpose in life, the goal toward which you are working, will help determine that knowledge you need. With this question settled, your next move requires that you have accurate information concerning dependable sources of knowledge. The more important of these are one's own experience and education. Second, experience and education available through cooperation of others, mastermind alliances. Third, colleges and universities. Fourth, public libraries through books and periodicals in which may be found all the knowledge organized by civilization. And fifth, special training courses through night schools and home study schools in particular. As knowledge is acquired, it must be organized and put into use for a definite purpose through practical plans. Knowledge has no value except that which can be gained from its application towards some worthy end. This is one reason why college degrees are not valued more highly. They represent nothing but miscellaneous knowledge.
If you contemplate taking additional schooling, first determine the purpose for which you want the knowledge you are seeking. Then learn where this particular sort of knowledge can be obtained from reliable sources. Successful men in all callings never stop acquiring specialized knowledge related to their major purpose, business, or profession. Those who are not successful usually make the mistake of believing that the knowledge acquiring period ends when one finishes school. The truth is that schooling does not little more than to put one in a way of learning how to acquire practical knowledge. With this changed world, which began at the end of economic collapse, came also astounding changes in educational requirements. The order of the day is specialization. This truth was emphasized by Robert P. Murray, Secretary of Appointments of Columbia University. Specialists most sought, particularly sought after by employing companies, are candidates who have specialized in some field, business school graduates with a training in accounting and statistics, engineers of all varieties, journalists, architects, chemists, and also outstanding leaders and activity men of the senior class. The man who has been active on the campus, whose personality is such that he gets along with all kinds of people and who has done an adequate job with his studies, has a most decided edge over the strictly academic student. Some of these, because of their all around qualifications, have received several offers of position, a few of them as many as 6. In departing from the conception that the straight A students was invariably the one to get the choice of the better jobs, Mr. Murray said that most companies look not only to academic records but to activity records and personalities of the students. One of the largest industrial companies, the leader in its field, in writing to Mr. Murray concerning prospective seniors at the college, said, "We are interested primarily in finding men who can make exceptional progress in management work. For this reason, we emphasize qualities of character, intelligence, and personality far more than specific educational background." Apprenticeship proposed. Proposing a system of apprenticing students in offices, stores, and industrial occupations during the summer vacation, Mr. Murray asserts that after the first 2 or 3 years of college, every student should be asked to choose a definite future course and to call a halt if he has been merely pleasantly drifting without purpose through an unspecialized academic curriculum. Colleges and universities must face the practical consideration that all professions and occupations now demand specialists. He said, urging that educational institutions accept more direct responsibility for vocational guidance. One of the most reliable and practical sources of knowledge available to those who need specialized schooling is the night schools operated in most large cities. The correspondence schools give specialized training anywhere the US males go on the subjects that can be taught by the extension method. One advantage of home study training is the flexibility of the study program, which permits one to study during spare time. Another stupendous advantage of home study training, if the school is carefully chosen, is the fact that most courses offered by home study schools carry with them generous privilege of consultation, which can be priceless value to those needing specialized knowledge. No matter where you live, you can share the benefits. Anything acquired without effort and without cost is generally unappreciated, often discredited. Perhaps this is why we get so little from our marvelous opportunity in public schools. The self-discipline one receives from a definite program of specialized study makes up to some extent for the wasted opportunity when knowledge was available without cost. Correspondence schools are highly organized business institutions. Their tuition fees are so low that they are forced to insist upon prompt payments. Being asked to pay whether the student makes good grades or poor has the effect of causing one to follow through with the course when he would otherwise drop it. The correspondence schools have not stressed this point sufficiently, for the truth is that their collection of departments constitute the very finest sort of training on decision, promptness, action, and the habit of finishing that which one begins. I learned this from experience more than 25 years ago. I enrolled for a home study course in advertising. After completing 8 or 10 lessons, I stopped studying. But the school did not stop sending me bills. Moreover, it insisted upon payment whether I kept up my studies or not. I decided that if I had to pay for the course which I had legally obligated myself to do, I should complete the lessons and get my money worth. I felt at the time that the collection system of the school was somewhat too well organized, but I learned later in life that it was a valuable part of my training for which no charge had been made. Being forced to pay, I went ahead and completed the course. Later in life, I discovered that the efficient collection system of that school had been worth much in the form of money earned because of the training in advertising I had so reluctantly taken. We have in this country what is said to be greatest public school system in the world. We have invested fabulous sums for fine buildings. We have provided convenient transportation for children living in the rural districts so they may attend the best schools. But there is one astounding weakness to the marvelous system: it is free. One of the strange things about human beings is that they value only that which has a price. The free schools of America and the free public libraries do not impress people because they are free. This is the major reason why so many people find it necessary to acquire additional training after they quit school and go lower. It is also one of the major reasons why employers give greater consideration to employees who take home study courses. They have learned from experience that any person who has ambition to give up a part of his spare time to studying at home has in him those qualities which make the leadership. This recognition is not a charitable gesture, it is sound business judgment upon the part of the employers. There is one weakness in people for which there is no remedy. It is the universal weakness of lack of ambition. Persons, especially salaried people who schedule their spare time to provide for home studies, seldom remain at the bottom very long. Their action opens the way for the upward climb, removes many obstacles from their path, and gains the friendly interest of those who have the power to put them in the way of opportunity. The home study method of training is especially suited to the needs of employed people who find after leaving school that they must acquire additional specialized knowledge but cannot spare the time to go back to school. The changed economic conditions prevailing since the depression have made it necessary for thousands of people to find additional or new sources of income. For the majority of these, the solution to their problem may be found only by acquiring specialized knowledge. Many will be forced to change their occupations entirely. When a merchant finds that a certain line of merchandise is not selling, he usually supplants it with another that is in demand. The person whose business is that of marketing personal services must also be an efficient merchant. If his services do not bring adequate returns in one occupation, he must change to another where broader opportunities are available. Strawn Austin prepared himself as an construction engineer and followed his line of work until the depression limited his market to where it did not give him the income he required. He took inventory of himself, decided to change his profession to law, went back to school and took special courses by which he prepared himself as an corporation lawyer despite of the fact the depression had not ended. He completed his training, passed the bar examination and quickly built a lucrative law practice in Dallas, Texas. In fact, he is turning away clients. Just to keep the record straight and to anticipate the alibis of those who will say, I couldn't go to school because I have a family to support, or I'm too old, I will add the information that Mr. Ware was past 40 and married when he went back to school. Moreover, by carefully selecting highly specialized courses in colleges best prepared to teach the subjects chosen, Mr. Ware completed in 2 years the work for which the majority of law students require 4 years. It pays to know how to purchase the knowledge. The person who stops studying merely because he has finished school is forever hopelessly doomed to mediocrity, no matter what may be his calling. The way of success is the way of continuous pursuit of knowledge. I need to repeat this. The way of success is the way of continuous pursuit of knowledge. Let us consider a specific instance. During the depression, a salesman in a grocery store found himself without a position. Having had some bookkeeping experience, he took a special course in accounting, familiarized himself with all the latest bookkeeping and office equipments, and went into business for himself. Starting with the grocer for whom he had formerly worked, he made contracts with more than 100 small merchants to keep their books at a very nominal monthly fee. His idea was so practical that he soon found it necessary to set up a portable office in a light delivery truck, which he equipped with modern bookkeeping machinery. He now has a fleet of these bookkeeping offices on wheels and employs a large staff of assistants, thus providing small merchants with accounting service equal to the best that money can buy at a very nominal cost. Specialized knowledge plus imagination were the ingredients that went into this unique and successful business. Last year, the owner of that business paid an income tax of almost 10 times as much as was paid by the merchant for whom he worked when the depression forced upon him a temporary adversity which proved to be a blessing in a disguise. The beginning of the successful business was an idea. Inasmuch as I had the privilege of supplying the unemployed salesmen with that idea, I now assume the further privilege of suggesting another idea which has within its possibility of even greater income. Also, the possibility of rendering useful services to thousands of people who badly need that service. The idea was suggested by the salesman who gave up selling and went into the business of keeping books on a wholesale basis. When the plan was suggested as a solution of his unemployment problem, he quickly exclaimed, I like the idea, but I would not know how to turn it into cash. In other words, he complained he would not know how to market his bookkeeping knowledge after he acquired it. So that he brought up another problem which had to be solved with the aid of a young woman typist clever at hand lettering and who could put the story together. A very attractive book was prepared describing the advantage of the new system of bookkeeping. The pages were neatly typed and pasted in an ordinary scrapbook, which was used as a silent salesman, with which the story of this new business was so effectively told that its owner soon had more accounts than he could handle. There are thousands of people all over the country who need the services of merchandising specialists capable of preparing an attractive brief for the use in marketing personal services. The aggregate annual income from such a service might easily exceed that received by the largest employment agency, and the benefits of the service might be made far greater to the purchaser than any to be obtained from an employment agency. The idea here described was born of necessity to bridge an emergency which had to be covered, but it did not stop by merely serving one person. The woman who created the idea has a keen imagination. She saw in her newly born brainchild the making of a new profession, one that is destined to render valuable services to thousands of people who need practical guidance in marketing personal services. Spurred to action by the instantaneous success of her first prepared plan to market personal services, this energetic woman turned next to the solution of a similar problem for her son, who had just finished college but had been totally unable to find a market for his services. The plan she originated for his use was the finest specimen of merchandising of personal services I have ever seen. When the plan book had been completed, it contained nearly 50 pages of beautifully typed, properly organized information telling the story of her son's native abilities, schooling, personal experiences, and a great variety of other information too expensive for description. The plan book also contained a complete description of the position her son desired, together with a marvelous word picture of the exact plan he would use in filling the position. The preparation of the plan required several weeks' labor, during which time its creator sent her son the public library almost daily to produce data needed in selling his services to best advantage. She sent him also to all the competitors of his prospective employer and gathered from them vital information concerning their business methods, which was of great value in the information of the plan he intended to use in filing the position he sought. When the plan had been finished, it contained more than half a dozen very fine suggestions for the use and benefit of the prospective employer. The suggestions were put into use by the company. One may be inclined to ask, why go to all this trouble to secure a job? The answer is straight to the point. Also, it is dramatic because it deals with a subject which assumes the proportion of a tragedy with millions of men and women whose sole source of income is personal services. The answer is, doing a thing well never is a trouble. The plan prepared by this woman for the benefit of her son helped him get the job for which he applied at the first interview at a salary fixed by himself. Moreover, and this too is important, the position did not require the young man to start at the bottom. He began as a junior executive at an executive's salary. Why go to all this trouble, do you ask? Well, for one thing, the planned presentation of this young man's application for a position clipped off no less than 10 years of time he would have required to get to where he began had he started at the bottom and worked his way up. This idea of starting at the bottom and working one's way up may appear to be sound, but the major objection to it is this: too many of those who begin at the bottom never manage to lift their heads high enough to be seen by opportunities, so they remain at the bottom. It should be remembered also that the outlook from the bottom is not so very bright or encouraging. It has a tendency to kill off ambition. We call it getting into a rut, which means that we accept our fate because we form the habit of daily routine, a habit that finally becomes so strong we cease to try to throw it off. And that is another reason why it pays to start one or two steps above the bottom. By so doing, one forms the habit of looking around, of observing how others get ahead, of seeing opportunity, and of embracing it without hesitation. Dan Halpin is a splendid example of what I mean. During his school days, he was a manager of the famous 1913 National Championship Notre Dame football team when it was under the direction of the late Knut Rockne. Perhaps he was inspired by the great football coach to aim high and not mistake temporary defeat for failure, just as Andrew Carnegie, the great industrial leader, inspired his young business lieutenants to set high goals for themselves. At any rate, Young Halpin finished college at a mighty unfavorable time when the depression has made jobs scarce. So after a fling at investment banking and motion pictures, he took the first opening with a potential future he could find, selling electrical hearing aids on an commission basis. Anyone could start in that sort of job, and Albin knew it, but it was enough to open the door of opportunity to him. For almost 2 years, he continued in a job not to his liking, and he would never have risen above that job if he had not done something about his dissatisfaction. He aimed first at the job of assistant sales manager of his company and got the job. That one step upward placed him high enough above the crowd to enable him to see still greater opportunity. Also, it placed him where opportunity could see him. He made such a fine record selling hearing aids that A.M. Andrews, chairman of the board of Dictograph Products Company, a business competitor of the company for which Hapin worked, wanted to know something about that man, Dan Hapling, who was taking big sales away from the long established Dictograph company. He sent for Hapin. When the interview was over, Hapin was the new sales manager in charge of the Acousticon division. Then, to test young Hapin's metal, Mr. Andrews went away to Florida for 3 months. Leaving him to sink or swim in his new job, he did not sink. New Trojan spirit of all the world loves a winner and has no time for a loser inspired him to put so much into his job that he was recently elected vice president of the company and general manager of the Acousticon and Silent Radio division, a job which most men could be proud to earn through 10 years of loyal effort. Hapin turned the trick in a little more than 6 months. It is difficult to say whether Mr. Andrews or Mr. Hapin is more deserving of eulogy, for the reason that both showed evidence of having an abundance of that very rare quality known as imagination. Mr. Andrews deserves credit for seeing in young Hapins a go-getter of the highest order. Hapin deserves credit of refusing to compromise with life by accepting and keeping a job he did not want, and that is one of the major points I am trying to emphasize through this entire philosophy, that we rise to high positions or remain at the bottom because of conditions we can control if we desire to control them. I am also trying to emphasize another point, namely that both the success and failure are largely the results of habit. I have not the slightest doubt that Dan Hapin close association with the greatest football coach America ever knew planted in his mind the same brand of desire to excel which made the Notre Dame football team world famous. Truly, there is something to the idea that hero worship is helpful provided one worships a winner. Hapin tells me that Rockne was one of the world's greatest leaders of men in all history. My belief in a theory that business associates are vital factors both in failure and in success was recently demonstrated when my son Blair was negotiating with Dan Hapin for a position. Mr. Hapin offered him the beginning salary of about one half that he could have gotten from a rival company. I brought a parental pressure to bear and induced him to accept the place with Mr. Hapin because I believe that close association with one who refuses to compromise with the circumstances he does not like is an asset that can never be measured in terms of money. The bottom is a monotonous, dreary, unprofitable place for any person. That is why I have taken the time to describe how lowly beginnings may be circumvented by proper planning. Also, that is why so much space has been devoted to a description of this new position created by a woman who was inspired to do a fine job of planning because she wanted her son to have a favorable break. With the changed conditions ushered in by the world economic collapse came also the need for newer and better ways of marketing personal services. It is hard to determine why someone had not previously discovered his stupendous need in view of the fact that more money changes hands in return in personal services than any other purpose. The sum paid out monthly to people who work for wages and salaries is so huge that it runs into hundreds of millions, and annual distribution amounts to billions. Perhaps some will find in the idea here briefly described the nucleus of the riches they desire. Ideas with much less merit have been a seedling from which great fortunes have grown. Woolworth's 5 and 10 cent store idea, for example, had far less merit, but it piled up a fortune for its creator. Those seeing opportunity lurking in this suggestion will find valuable aid in the chapter on organized planning. Incidentally, an efficient merchandiser of personal services would find a growing demand for his services wherever there are men and women who seek better markets for their services. By applying the mastermind principle, a fewer people with a suitable talent could form a alliance and have a paying business very quickly. One would need to be a fair writer with a flair for advertising and selling, and one handy at typing and hand lettering. And one should be a first-class business getter who would let the world know about the service. If one person possessed all these abilities, he might carry on business alone until it outgrew him. The woman who prepared the personal service sales plan for her son now receives a request from all parts of the country for her cooperation in preparing similar plans for others who desire to market their personal services for more money. She has a staff of expert typists, artists, and writers who have the ability to dramatize the case history so effectively that one's personal services can be marketed for such more money than prevailing wages for similar services. She is so confident of her ability that she accepts as a major portion of her fee a percentage of the increased pay she helps her clients to earn. It must not be supposed that her plan merely consists of clever salesmanship by which she helps men and women to demand and receive more money for his same services they formerly sold for less pay. She looks after the interest of the purchaser as well as the seller of personal services, and so prepares her plans that the employer receives full value for the additional money he pays. The method by which she accompanies this astonishing results is a professional secret which she discloses to no one expecting her own clients. If you have the imagination and seek a more profitable outlet for your personal services, this suggestion may be the stimulus for which you have been searching. The idea is capable of yielding an income far greater than that of the average doctor, lawyer, or engineer whose education requires several years in college. The idea is sellable to those seeking new position is practically all positions calling for managerial or executive ability, and those desiring rearrangements of income in their present positions. There is no fixed price for sound ideas. Back of all ideas is specialized knowledge. Unfortunately, for those who do not find riches in abundance, specialized knowledge is more abundant and more easily acquired than ideas. Because of this very much truth, there is a universal demand and an ever-increasing opportunity for the person capable of helping men and women to sell their personal services advantageously. Capability means imagination, the one quality needed to combine specialized knowledge with ideas in the form of organized plans designed to yield riches. If you have imagination, this chapter may present you with an idea sufficient to serve as the beginning of the riches you desire. Remember, the idea is the main thing. Specialized knowledge may be found just around the corner, any corner. Let us get ahead with chapter number 6, Imagination, the workshop of the mind, the fifth step towards riches. The imagination is literally the workshop wherein are fashioned all plans created by man. The impulse, the desire, is given shape, form, and action through the aid of the imaginative faculty of the mind. It has been said that man can create anything which he can imagine. Of all the ages of civilization, this is the most favorable for the development of the imagination because it is an age of rapid change. On every hand, one may contact stimuli which develop the imagination. Through the aid of his imaginative faculty, the man has discovered and harnessed more of the nature's forces during the past 50 years than during the entire history of the human race previous to that time. He has conquered the air so completely that the birds are a poor match for him in flying. He has harnessed the ether and made it serve as a means of instantaneous communication with any part of the world. He has analyzed and weighted the sun at a distance of the millions of miles and has determined through the aid of imagination the elements of which it consists. He has discovered that his own brain is both a broadcasting and receiving station for the vibration of thought, and he is beginning now to learn how to make practical use of this discovery. He has increased the speed of locomotion until he may now travel at a speed of more than 300 miles an hour. The time will soon come when a man may breakfast in New York and lunch in San Francisco. Man's only limitation within reason lies in this development and use of his imagination. Man's only limitation within reason lies in his development and use of his imagination. He has not yet reached the apex of development in the use of his imaginative faculty. He has merely discovered that he has an imagination and has commenced to use it in a very elementary way. Two forms of imagination. The imaginative faculty functions in two forms. One is known as synthetic imagination and the other as creative imagination, synthetic imagination. Through this faculty, one may arrange old concepts, ideas, or plans into new combinations. This faculty creates nothing. It merely works with a material of experience, education, and observation with which it is fed. It is the faculty used most by inventor, with the exception of the who draws upon the creative imagination when he cannot solve his problems through synthetic imagination. Creative imagination. Through the faculty of creative imaginations, the finite mind of a man has direct communication with the infinite intelligence. It is the faculty through which hunches and inspirations are received. It is by this faculty that all basic or new ideas are handed over to man. It is through this faculty that thought vibrations from the minds of others are received. It is through this faculty that one individual may tune in or communicate with the subconscious mind of other man. The creative imagination works automatically in the manner described in subsequent pages. This faculty functions only when the conscious mind is vibrating at an exceedingly rapid rate, as for example when the conscious mind is stimulated through the emotion of a strong desire. The creative faculty becomes more alert, more receptive to vibrations from the source mentioned in proportion to its development through use. This statement is significant. Ponder over it before passing on. Keep in mind as you follow these principles that the entire story of how one may convert desire into money cannot be told in one statement. The story will be complete only when one has mastered, assimilated, and begun to make use of all principles. The great leaders of business, industry, finance, and great artists, musicians, poets, and writers become great because they developed the faculty of creative imagination. Both the synthetic and creative faculties of imagination become more alert with use, just as any muscle or organ of the body develops through use. Desire is only a thought, an impulse. It is nebulous and ephemeral. It is abstract and of no value until it has been transformed into its physical counterpart. While the synthetic imagination is the one which will be used most frequently in the process of transforming the impulse desire into money, you must keep in mind the fact that you may face circumstances and situations which demand use of creative imagination as well. Your imaginative faculty may have become weak through inaction. It can be revived and made alert through use. This faculty does not die, though it may become quiescent through lack of use. Center your attention for the time being on the development of the synthetic imagination, because this is the faculty which you will use more often in the process of converting desire into money. Transformation of the intangible impulse of desire into tangible reality of money calls for the use of a plan or plans. These plans must be formed with the aid of the imagination and mainly with the synthetic faculty. Read the entire book through, then come back to this chapter and begin at once to put your imagination to work on the building of a plan or plans for the transformation of your desire into money. Detailed instructions for the building of a plan have been given in almost every chapter. Carry out the instructions best suited to your needs. Reduce your plan to writing if you have not already done so. The moment you complete this, you will have definitely given concentrate form to the intangible desire. Read the preceding sentences once more. Read it aloud very slowly, and as you do so, remember that the moment you reduce the statement of your desire and a plan of its realization to writing, you have actually taken the first of the series of steps which will enable you to convert the thought into its physical counterpart. The earth on which you live, you, yourself, and every other material thing are the result of evolutionary change through which microscopic bits of matter have been organized and arranged in an orderly fashion. Moreover, and this statement is of stupendous importance, this earth, every one of millions of individual cells of your body, and every atom of the matter began as an intangible form of energy. Desire is a thought impulse. Thought impulses are forms of energy. When you begin with the thought impulse, desire to accumulate money, you are drafting into your service of the same stuff that nature used in creating this earth and every material form in the universe, including the body and brain in which the thought impulses function. As far as science has been able to determine, the entire universe consists of two elements, matter and energy. Through the combination of energy and matter has been created everything perceptible to man, from the largest star which floats in the heavens down to and including man himself. You are now engaged in the task of trying to profit the nature's method. You are sincerely and earnestly, we hope, trying to adapt yourself to nature's laws by endeavoring to convert desire into its physical or monetary equivalent. You can do it. It has been done before. You can build a fortune through the aid of laws which are immutable, but first you must become familiar with these laws and learn to use them. Through repetition and by approaching the description of these principles from every conceivable angles, the author hopes to reveal to you the secret through which every great fortune has been accumulated. Strange and paradoxical as it may seem, the secret is not a secret. Nature herself advertises it in the earth on which we live, the stars, the planets suspended within our view, in the elements above and around us, in every blade of grass and every form of life within our vision. Nature advertises this secret in the form of biology, in the conversation of a tiny cell, so small that it may be lost on the point of a pin, into a human being now reading this line. The conversation of desire into its physical equivalent is certainly no more miraculous. Do not become discouraged if you do not fully comprehend all that has been stated. Unless you have long been a student of the mind, it is not to be expected that you will assimilate all that is in this chapter upon a first reading, but you will in time make good progress. The principles which follow will open the way of understanding of imagination. Assimilate that which you understand as you read this philosophy for the first time. Then when you reread and study it, you will discover that something has happened to clarify it and give you a broader understanding of the whole. Above all, do not stop nor hesitate in your study of these principles until you have read the book at least 3 times. For 95 to 95 96, then you will not want to stop. How to make practical use of imagination. Ideas are beginning of points of all fortunes. Ideas are products of the imagination. Let us examine a few well-known ideas which have yielded huge fortunes, with the hope that these illustrations will convey definite information concerning the method by which imagination may be used in accumulating riches. The Enchanted Cattle. 50 years ago, an old country doctor drove to town, hitched his horse, quietly slipped into a drugstore by the back door, and began dickering with the young drug clerk. His mission was destined to yield great wealth to many people. It was destined to bring to the South and most far-flung benefit since the Civil War. For more than an hour behind the prescription counter, the old doctor and the clerk talked in low tones. Then the doctor left. He went out to the buggy and brought back a large old-fashioned kettle, a big wooden pedal used for stirring the contents of the kettle, and deposited them in the back of the store. The clerk inspected the kettle, reached into his inside pocket, took out a roll of bills, and handed it over to the doctor. The roll contained exactly $500, the clerk's entire savings. The doctor handed over a small slip of paper on which was written a secret formula. The words on that small slip of paper were worth a king's ransom, but not to the doctor. Those magic words were needed to start the kettle to boiling, but neither the doctor nor the young clerk knew what fabulous fortunes were destined to flow from that kettle. The old doctor was glad to sell the outfit for $500. The money would pay off his debts and give him freedom of mind. The clerk was taking a big chance by staking his entire life saving on a mere scrap of paper and an old kettle. He never dreamed his investments would start a kettle to overflowing with gold that would surpass the miraculous performance of Aladdin's lamp. What the clerk really purchased was an idea. The old kettle and the wooden paddle and the secret message on the slip of paper were incidental. The strange performance of that kettle began to take place after the new owner mixed with the secret instructions and ingredients of which the doctor knew nothing. Read this story carefully, give your imagination a test, see if you can discover what it was that a young man added to the secret message which caused the kettle to overflow with gold. Remember as you read that this is not a story from the Arabian Nights. Here you have a story of facts stranger than fiction, facts which began in the form of an idea. Let us take a look at the vast fortunes of gold this idea has produced. It has paid and still pays huge fortunes to men and women all over the world who distribute the contents of the kettle to millions of people. The old kettle is now one of the world's largest consumers of sugar, thus providing jobs of a permanent nature to thousands of men and women engaged in growing sugarcane and in refining and marketing sugar. The old kettle consumes annually millions of glass bottles, providing jobs to a huge number of glass workers. The old kettle gives employment to an army of clerks, stenographers, copywriters, and advertising experts throughout the nation. It has brought fame and fortune to scores of artists who have created magnificent pictures describing the product. The old kettle has converted a small southern city into the business capital of South, where it now benefits directly or indirectly every business and practically every resident of the city. The influence of this idea now benefits every civilized country in the world, pouring out a continuous stream of gold to all who touch it. Gold from the kettle built and maintained one of the most prominent colleges of South, and where thousands of young people receive the training essential for success. The old kettle has done other marvelous things all through the world depression, when factories, banks, and business houses were folding up and quitting by the thousands. The owner of this enchanted kettle went marching on, giving continuous employment to an army of men and women all over the world, and paying out extra portions of the gold to those who long ago had faith in the idea. If the product of that old brass kettle could talk, it would tell thrilling tales of the romance in every language, romances of love, romances of business, romances of professional men and women who are daily being stimulated by it. The author is sure of at least one such romance, for he was a part of it, and it all began not far from the very spot on which the drug clerk purchased the old kettle. It was here that the author met his wife, and it was she who first told him of the enchanted kettle. It was the product of that kettle they were drinking when he asked her to accept him for better or worse. Now that you know the content of the enchanted kettle is a world's famous drink, it is fitting that the author confesses that the home city of the drink supplied him with a wife, also that the drink itself provides him with stimulation of thought without intoxication, and thereby it serves to give the refreshment of mind which an author must have to do his best work. Whoever you are, where you may live, whatever occupation you may be engaged in, just remember this. Remember in the future, every time you see the words Coca-Cola, that it vast empire of wealth and influence grew out of a single idea, and that the mysterious ingredients the drug clerk Asa Cadler mixed with the secret formula was imagination. Stop and think of that for a moment. Remember also that the 13 steps to riches described in this book were the media through which the influence of Coca-Cola has been extended to every city, town, village, and across roads of the world, and that any idea you may create as sound and meritorious as Coca-Cola has the possibility of duplicating an stupendous record of this worldwide thirst killer. Truly, thoughts are things, and their scope of operation is the world itself. What I would do if I had $1,000,000. This story proves the truth of that old saying, where there is a will, there is a way. It was told to me by that beloved educator and clergyman, the late Frank V. Wilson, who began his preaching career in the stock arts region of South Chicago. While Dr. Frank was going through college, he observed many defects in our educational system, defects which he believed he could correct if he were the head of a college. His deepest desire was to become the directing the head of an educational institution in which young men and women would be taught to learn by doing. He made up his mind to organize a new college in which he could carry out his ideas without being handicapped by orthodox methods of education. He needed $1,000,000 to put the project across. Where was he to lay his hands on so large a sum of money? That was the question that absorbed most of this ambitious young preacher's thought. but he couldn't seem to make any progress. Every night he took that thought to bed with him. He got up with it in the morning. He took it with him everywhere he went. He turned it over and over in his mind until it became a consuming obsession with him. $1 million is a lot of money. He recognized that the fact, but he also recognized the truth that the only limitation is that which one sets up in is one's own mind. The only limitation is that which one sets up in one's own mind. Being a philosopher as well as a preacher, Dr. Frank organized as do all who succeed in life, the definiteness of purpose in the starting point from which one must begin. He recognized too that the definiteness of purpose takes on animation, life, and power, which backed up by a burning desire to translate that purpose into its material equivalent. He knew all these great truths, yet he did not know where and how to lay his minds on $1 million. The natural procedure would have been to give up and quit by saying, well, my idea is a good one, but I cannot do anything with it because I never can procure the necessary $1 million. That is exactly what the majority of people would have said, but it is not what Dr. Frank said. What he said and what he did are so important that I now introduce him and let him speak for himself. One Saturday afternoon, I sat in my room thinking of ways and means of raising the money to carry out my plans. For nearly 2 years, I had been thinking, but I had done nothing but think. The time had to come for action. I made up my mind then and there that I would get the necessary $1 million within a week. How? I was not concerned about that. The main thing of importance was the decision to get the money within a specified time. And I want to tell you that the moment I reached a definite decision to get the money within a specified time, a strange feeling of assurance came over me, such as I had never before experienced. Something inside me seemed to say, why didn't you reach that decision a long time ago? The money was waiting for you all the time. Things began to happen in a hurry. I called the newspapers and announced I would preach a sermon the following morning entitled What I Would Do If I Had $1 million. I went to work on a sermon immediately, but I must tell you frankly, the task was not difficult because I had been preparing that sermon for almost 2 years. The spirit back of it was a part of me. Long before midnight, I had finished the writing of sermon. I went to bed and slept with a feeling of confidence, for I could see myself already in possession of millions of dollars. Next morning, I arose early, went into the bathroom, read the sermon, then knelt on my knees and asked that my sermon might come to the attention of someone who would supply the needed money. While I was praying, I again had that feeling of assurance that the money would be forthcoming. In my excitement, I walked out without my sermon and did not discover the oversight until I was in my pulpit and about ready to begin delivering it. It was too late to go back for my notes, and what a blessing that I couldn't go back. Instead, my own subconscious mind yielded the material I needed. When I arose to begin my sermon, I closed my eyes and spoke with all my heart and soul of my dreams. I not only talked to my audience, but I fancy I talked also to God. I told what I would do with $1 million if that amount were placed in my hands. I described the plan I had in mind for organizing a great educational institution where young people would learn to do practical things and at the same time develop their minds. When I had finished and sat down, a man slowly arose from his seat about 3 rows from the rear and made his way towards the pulpit. I wondered what he was going to do. He came into the pulpit, extended his hand, and said, Reverend, I liked your sermon. I believe you can do everything you said you would if you had $1 million. To prove that I believe in you and your sermon, if you will come to my office tomorrow morning, I will give you the $1 million. My name is Philip D. Armour. Young Frank went to the Mr. Armour's office and millions of dollars was presented to him. With the money, he founded the Armour Institute of Technology. That is more money than the majority of preachers ever see in an entire lifetime. Yet the thought impulse back of the money was created the young preacher's mind in an fraction of a minute. The necessary $1 million came as a result of an idea. Back of an idea was a desire which young Dr. Frank had been nursing in his mind for almost 2 years. Observe this important fact: he got the money within the 36 hours after he reached a definite decision in his own mind to get it, and decided upon a definite plan for getting it. There was nothing new or unique about young Dr. Frank Wegg thinking about $1 million and weakly hoping for it. Others before him and many since his time have had similar thoughts, but there was something very unique and different about the decision he reached on that memorable Saturday when he put vagueness into the background and definitely said, I will get that money within a week. God seems to throw himself on the side of the man who knows exactly what he wants if he is determined to get just that. Moreover, the principle through which Dr. Frank got his $1 million is still alive. It is available to you. This universal law is unworkable today as it was when the young preacher made use of it so successfully. This book describes step by step the 13 elements of this great law and suggests how they may be put to use. Observe that Asa Cadler and Dr. Frank had one characteristic in common. Both knew the astounding truth that ideas can be transmuted into cash through the power of a definite purpose plus definite plans. If you are one of those who believes that hard work and honesty alone will bring riches, perish the thought. It is not true. Riches, when they came in the huge quantities, are never the results of hard work. Riches come, if they come at all, in response to definite demands based upon the application of definite principles and not by chance or luck. Generally speaking, an idea is an impulse of thought that impels action by an appeal to the imagination. All master salesmen know that ideas can be sold where merchandise cannot. Ordinary salesmen do not know this. That is why they are ordinary. A publisher of a book which sell for a nickel made a discovery that should be worth much to publishers generally. He learned that many people buy titles and not contents of the book. By merely changing the name of one book that was not moving, his sales on that book jumped upward more than 1 million copies. The inside of the book was not changed in any way. He merely ripped off the cover bearing the title that did not sell and put on a new cover with a title that had box office value. That, as simple as it may seem, was an idea. It was imagination. There is no standard price on ideas. The creator of ideas makes his own price, and if he is smart, gets it. The moving picture industry created a whole flock of millionaires. Most of them were men who couldn't create ideas, but they had the imagination to recognize ideas when they saw them. The next flock of millionaires will grow out of the radio business, which is new and not overburdened with men of keen imagination. The money will be made by those who discover or create new or more mysterious radio programs and have the imagination to recognize merit and to give the radio listeners a chance to profit by it. The sponsor, that fortunate victim who now pays the cost of all radio entertainment, soon will become idea conscious and demand something for his money. The man who beats the sponsor to the draw and supplies programs that render useful services is the man who will become rich in his new industry. Crooners and the light chatter artists who now pollute the air with secrets and silly giggles will go the way of all the light timbers, and their places will be taken by the real artists who interpret carefully planned programs which have been designed to service the minds of men as well as provide entertainment. Here is a wide open field of opportunities screaming its protest at the way it is being butchered because of lack of imagination and begging for rescue at any price. Above all, the thing that radio needs is new ideas. If this new field of opportunity intrigues you, perhaps you might profit by the suggestion that the successful radio programs of the future will give more attention to creating buyer audiences and less attention to listeners audiences. Stated more plainly, the builder of radio programs who succeeds in the future must find practical ways to convert listeners into buyers. Moreover, the successful producer of radio programs in the future must key his future so that he can definitely show its effect upon the audience. Sponsors are becoming a bit wary of buying glib selling talks based upon statements grabbed out of thin air. They want and in the future will demand indisputable proof that the Ushit program not only give millions of people the silliest giggle ever, but that the silly giggler can sell merchandise. Another thing that might as well be understood by those who contemplate entering this new field of opportunity, radio advertising is going to be handled by an entirely new group of advertising experts, separate and distinct from the old-time newspaper and magazine advertising agency men. The old-timers in the advertising game cannot read the modern radio scripts because they have been schooled to see ideas. The new radio techniques demands men who can interpret ideas from a written manuscript in terms of sound. It costs the author a year of hard labor and many thousands of dollars to learn this. Radio right now is about where the moving pictures were when Mary Pickard and her curls first appeared on the screen. There is plenty of room in a radio for those who can produce or recognize ideas. If the foregoing comment on the opportunities of radio has not started your idea factory to work, you had better forget it. Your opportunity is in some other field. If the comment intrigued you in the slightest degree, then go further into it and you may find the one idea you need to round out your career. Never let it discourage you if you have no experience in radio. Andrew Carnegie knew very little about making steel. I have Carnegie's own word for this, but he made practical use of two of the principles described in this book and made the steel business yield him a fortune. The story of practically every great fortune starts with the day when a creator of idea and a seller of idea got together and worked in harmony. The story of practically every great fortune starts with the day when the creator of idea and a seller of idea got together and worked in harmony. Carnegie surrounded himself with men who could do all that he could not do. Men who created ideas and men who put ideas into operation and made himself and the others fabulously rich. Millions of people go through life hoping for favorable breaks. Perhaps a favorable break can get one an opportunity, but the safest plan is not to depend upon luck. It was a favorable break that gave me the biggest opportunity of my life, but 25 years of determined effort had to be devoted to that opportunity before it became an asset. The break consisted of my good fortune in a meeting and gaining the cooperation of Andrew Carnegie. On that occasion, Carnegie planted in my mind the idea of organizing the principles of achievement into a philosophy of success. Thousands of people have profited by the discoveries made in the 25 years of research, and several fortunes have been accumulated through the applications of the philosophy. The beginning was simple, it was an idea which anyone might have developed. The favorable break came through the Carnegies, but what about the determination, definiteness of purpose, and the desire to attain the goal, and the persistent effort of 25 years? It was no ordinary desire that survived disappointments, discouragements, temporary defeat, criticism, and the constant reminding of waste of time. It was a burning desire and obsession. When the idea was first planted in my mind by Mr. Carnegie, it was coaxed, nursed, and enticed to remain alive. Gradually, the idea became a giant under its own power, and it coaxed, nursed, and drove me. Ideas are like that. First, you give life and action and guidance to ideas, then they take on power of their own and sweep aside all opposition. Ideas are intangible forces, but they have more power than the physical brains that give birth to them. They have the power to live on after the brain that creates them has returned to dust. For example, take the power of Christianity that began with a simple idea born in the brain of Christ. Its chief tenet was, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Christ has gone back to the source from whence he came, but his idea goes marching on. Someday it may grow up and come into its own. Then it will have fulfilled Christ's deepest desire, the idea he has been developing only 2000 years. Give it time. Success requires no explanation, failure permits no alibis. That's it as per as part 2 of this very special book, which is entitled as Think and Grow Rich is concerned. Already way back we have decided you are going to help me to reach millions of people. And how you are going to help me? You are going to help me by sharing these videos or these audiobooks or the video contents which we have created so far, by sharing with as many people as you can. You are going to help me to reach the millions, because we all together with you and our team, what we are trying to do, we are trying to create a more peaceful, joyful and loving world, and I am very much sure that you all are going to help me with this journey. Thank you so much all of you for connecting with us. Have a great day. Thank you so much.
Appreciate our efforts by subscribing to our channel. Thank you.